Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome back, everybody. Guest today is Soraya Benitez. Soraya, please tell us where you are in the world and what you do for a living.
Hi, I am in New York, and I am a mompreneur, sort of a hybrid, a mom, a full-time, not hybrid, and an entrepreneur, a startup working in the herbal homeopathic world.
It's amazing. So tell us a little bit about, kind of your background and some like where you got the idea from, like the problem you kind of ran into that you're looking to solve, and what your kind of catalyst was taking the idea to actually a full-fledged brand and develop product.
In my prior career, I worked in finance, and I covered publicly traded companies you've heard of like Kellogg and General Mills.
Oh, wow.
And after listening to many calls, it sort of got it in my brain, and it's sort of also noticing some of just the things that I gravitated towards in the whether it be the pharmacy or in the supermarket. And I just really got the sense that a lot of these managements, bigger companies, didn't really understand the changing in consumerism and kind of like the needs for demand, i.e. transparency in some of the products that we have. And so my son was sick one day, and he was on the couch and he didn't want to take his cough medicine because it kind of tasted like crap. And I said to my husband, I said, if only there was something that was as good as candy, because he seems to have no problem eating that. And my husband pulled it up on Amazon and said, here, there is actually something. So I looked at it, and like I'm not going to call myself a helicopter mom, but just in general, you care about the ingredients you take, you care about the ingredients you give to your children. When I turned it to the back and saw the ingredients, there's a whole bunch of stuff I couldn't pronounce. And I know that I wouldn't take myself, let alone give to a child. And so I just started kind of on this little scientific experiment of making things in my kitchen and buying like candy thermometers and that kind of thing. And so that's kind of where I started.
That's awesome. And then so what kind of took you to this specific idea with this brand, with homeopathic, organic, everything, with these like lollipop drops?
Well, a lot of these things, a lot of the products that we have, we have two, but we're actually launching a third, get to in a little bit. But a lot of these really came from just my own personal need and just kind of what I felt there wasn't in the market. And I've suffered from vertigo my entire life. In fact, 2/3 of women suffer from motion sickness. It has something to do with sort of our hormonal chemical makeup. Children do often as well. Sometimes they grow out of it, sometimes they don't. But I was actually on a cruise and I couldn't take anything because I was pregnant. When you're pregnant, you really can't take any kind of medication. And the one thing actually that I found that worked halfway decent for me were those wristbands. You can find them. They're motion sickness bands. But no one told me you had to wear them before you got on at the ship. What they do is they kind of touch a sort of
I've seen those. I didn't know that either. I've never used them. I don't have motion sickness, so I've never used them. I didn't know you were supposed to do it beforehand.
You're supposed to do that beforehand, and sort of hits like a point, an acupressure point in your body that's supposed to help with the motion sickness, which really has to do a lot with your ear and the science behind that. So I ran to the little gift shop on the boat, and I really didn't, outside of Dramamine and those motion sickness bands, which I really couldn't wear because I had to have worn them before, nothing really worked for me. So I actually spent most of the trip, it was like a 7-day trip. I spent most of it in bed. Like I couldn't get out from the bed because that boat was like, I was like, this is awful. And there were some drops that I did enjoy taking, but they did have high fructose corn syrup. And so that was really the inspiration for our motion sickness product, which you see up over here. And just making something that was natural, organic, with ingredients people knew and understood, and trying to make them as tasty as possible, but also as helpful as possible. And lemon and ginger are two ingredients that have been tried and true since the beginning of time. Lemon actually helps sort of start the salivation, saliva in your mouth, so that you sort of hold things back down, and ginger is very good for upset stomach. So the combination of the two seem to just really work for things like motion sickness and other things.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, and I was also looking through the website. I was curious because I see on most of the packaging, it'll say like age 3+. So did this kind of start? I mean, obviously from your personal experience, this is where it started. So, but did you just kind of start with the branding, thinking that it would be something more marketed to parents for their kids, and then realize like some of the potential benefits for like other demographics after? Or I'm just curious because like I could see that being the case, but I wanted to hear from you like what exactly your experience was with that.
200%. Yes. It's been such a rewarding ride. I have to say, as an entrepreneur, you have high highs and low lows. There's no sugarcoating. There's nothing sexy about it. You really try to take the wins really great, but you also know that there's going to be some low points as well. It's hard being an entrepreneur. But one of the incredibly rewarding things that I found during this process is that the wide spectrum of people that suffer from motion sickness, altitude sickness, I just learned that, and I'm going to botch it, but there's even a word for air traveling sickness, agoraphobia, I believe it's called, and all of these different things that really sort of have that really impact that sort of internal clock that gives you this motion sickness. One of the things that does give nausea is also IVF and medical induced treatments. There's not a ton of science behind it, but it does actually. And in fact, the reason that this has been so rewarding for me as well is through this process, we've learned that this has actually helped people suffering from nausea induced by IVF or by chemo. One of the things I'm incredibly proud of is we work with the NBCF, the National Breast Cancer Foundation, to donate
that's awesome.
Our lemon ginger pouches to their Hope Kits, which are kits that they give for chemo patients who are going through nausea. So really have found it rewarding, and some of the really kind emails back just sort of really make my day when I get them. It's so rewarding.
Yeah, that's amazing. So which one kind of came first? I'm curious, like obviously in your story with your son who was sick, was that kind of the first product, and then you kind of went to like the nausea relief side after?
No, no, I actually originally it was my elderberry pop. These are small. We're launching these travel size bags, which are great for on the go. So we're launching these in the next couple of weeks. But originally it was this elderberry product. However, people might just think that this is like a simple product, but there's not. There's so much that goes into it, Matt. I actually learned that just scaling up any product is hard enough. But when you're dealing with a candy, it is actually a food science, because the candy itself cooks at different temperatures. Like a gummy will cook different than like say a Tootsie Roll or a hard candy. So it has to cook at a certain temperature. And there are a lot of things that affect that. Altitude can affect that. The moisture in the air, some of these facilities have to be vacuum sealed. That's why a lot of the candies that you find out there are made with high fructose corn syrup, because it's an easy, abundant, and cheap way to sort of make hard candy. You won't find a lot of candies made with honey, which is what our product is made of. And so it makes it a lot harder in the manufacturing process. All the things that I learned after the fact. In fact, I'd actually worked with somebody a food scientist who was helping me, and just the men trying to get these to market. And she's like, what you're trying to do just can't be done. So she actually gave me back my money and offloaded me off to a professional food science company. And even they couldn't get it done. So it was honestly the hardest part was actually finding someone to help manufacture these in the right way and the most highest quality way that I could possibly get. And so
so tell me a little bit more about that journey. Like what did you, obviously you just told us about, like some of the initial ones, people saying it can't be done, it's impossible. So like what were your next steps after hearing that, and how did you end up finding somebody who could actually do it for you?
So I am the daughter of two Colombian immigrants. They both came to New York. They met here, married, and I'm one of three. I'm the oldest. But my dad worked really hard, and he had a very high work ethic. And he always, not through words, but through example, always taught us that like the word no wasn't in our vocabulary. And he never said it, but he just always persevered, and he always worked hard. And I'm grateful for that, because he did instill that. And I think that's one of the things that you really need if you are going to be an entrepreneur, because you have so many people telling you no, so many people saying it can't be done or it's impossible, that it does. You're only human. It beats up on your ego. It beats up on your hope, your dreams. Like, oh my gosh, there's so many people. Am I just stupid, or am I just like really stupid? Like what, So a lot of people said it couldn't be done. And it was the hardest part of the journey, actually finding someone who could help make this, because like I said, it has honey, which is hygroscopic, meaning that it tends to absorb a lot of the moisture in the air. So it adds an element of difficulty. You will not find a lot of candies made with honey for that reason. Even Ricola, they say that they have honey, but I guarantee you the honey that they have is absolutely minuscule because
honey, artificial flavor, probably.
Yeah,
Not like actual.
I'm not banging on Ricola. It is a wonderful menthol candy, but the level of difficulty, the batting average is really high because of the ingredients themselves. And so it was just really, really hard. And we finally found someone who opened up the door just a quarter of the way. But this was the first product I wanted to come to market with, which was the elderberry and sore throat. However, it had a lot of ingredients. It had elderberry in it, which was grown from organic farms. It's one of the largest organic producers here in the country. And so they didn't want to go through the steps. And so I had these two products and they said, this one's a little bit easier to make. And so I said, just like with any entrepreneur, sometimes you just have to pivot. Sometimes it's break or make. It's going to do, are you going to give this up or are you just going to shift and give it a go? And so we did that. And it was the best decision I think I could have made because it was hugely well received. And it was the right call because the nausea and motion sickness is a very niche market. And so it just turned out to be the right call for us. So very happy that it worked.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so were you able to work with this manufacturer or I don't know, call them manufacturer, but were you able to work with this partner there in order to make the other product eventually as well and work with that once you were able to work with them? And yes. That's awesome.
Exactly. But it's really hard as well because a lot of these manufacturers, there's really two options if you're making a consumer-led product. It's make it yourself or find someone to make it co-man.
Right.
There's no other options. And you can start it from the bottom up. You can be a Tesla. You can be Elon Musk and disruptive in an automotive industry where you're dealing with titans and try to do that, but you'll need millions of dollars and a lot of backers unless you're independently wealthy. And so for most people, they go this route. And so that can be very, very hard because you're really dealing in a sea of not only oversaturation, meaning they have tons of people knocking on the door. Will you make this for me? Will you, So it's hard, and they're dealing with much larger scale products already. And so you're glad if they'll even open the door halfway. You're glad if they'll take a call. You're glad if they'll even consider trying to help you make this product and come to market. Yeah, it's very grateful for the opportunity for sure. But
that's awesome. Yeah,
it was not easy.
Yeah, so I'm curious, kind of like the business side, now that you kind of have like the back end things like more set up, you have good partners to work with for your manufacturing and everything. What is kind of the breakdown between, you obviously sell the products online, how much you're doing like through your online sales versus, what you're doing in wholesale? And also, are there any other channels you sell through? Like, are you on Amazon or anything else like that? Or is it just kind of like the website and your wholesale business?
The majority of actually our business, large part of it is Amazon. And
awesome.
The one thing I'll tell you what's funny is I used to cover these companies publicly traded. So I thought like, oh, I cover these companies. I know what I'm doing. And that is like the opposite. I almost had to unlearn everything I knew from my prior life and literally do like an MBA, a self-served MBA in entrepreneurship. It was like, OMG, like I know nothing. I absolutely know nothing. But the a few little things that have helped along the way from my prior knowledge is needing to understand where your customer is, where are they going to buy these things. You have to be there, whether you like it or not. Now, not dinging Amazon, but we'll say that you're not the easiest person to deal with. I'm sure I'm not the only person who's shared that.
Certainly not. Yeah.
I'll keep it PG, but grateful to be on this platform. I know that I need to be on this platform because this is the way people shop. This is virtual world. It's easy. It's convenient. You get it in a few days. But that being said, really running hard and working hard towards diversifying the business as well. So I would say the breakdown is somewhere like 80-ish% Amazon.
Oh, wow.
10% the website online, Walmart.com, other vehicles, and the rest wholesale. So
that's awesome. So have you taken any kind of efforts or steps to try to drive more of the business through direct to consumer through the website? Obviously, Amazon is so big. And I mean, that's clear. That's obviously the biggest part of your business. So you don't want to like complicate that in any way. But I know Amazon can be tough for a couple of reasons. One being obviously kind of cuts into your margins a little bit, but also you miss out on a lot of like the actual customer data that you can get if they were buying direct from you, right? You could turn around and do surveys and market them after the fact and all that kind of stuff. So obviously, like in an ideal world, right, everybody would just buy direct from the website. So are you working to kind of get more of the share of the revenue coming from the website itself, or what's your kind of take on that at this point?
Working so hard on it. And this is another thing too, for any entrepreneurs to listen to your webcast to consider. Not only is there sort of opaqueness in terms of the data and information you get from your customer. It's so filtered, which is the hardest part because it's prohibitively expensive for most like consumer companies, product companies, startup to do FBM, fulfilling by manufacturer. So it makes the world of a sense to do FBA, fulfilled by Amazon. And I presume that the majority of the people who sell products on Amazon do that because there's no way you're going to get into the buy box or 2-day shipping unless you do that. It's the costs are just prohibitive and there's no guarantee you're going to get it to that consumer in 2 days. So don't even think about it. And I'm sure, and believe me, when I first started before getting on Amazon, I looked at every single, I'm like, well, no, there's no way. You're just not going to, you just go with FBA. There's just no other way. But that being said, yes, you're right. It is a lot. The other thing that people should also consider, which is like kind of sort of scary and a little bit defeatist, is that they have access to all these categories. So not only you're selling on their platform and they don't give you a lot of information, but they have access to what the top selling things are in your category, okay, by month and all that data. And so they see, and of course, oh my gosh, Matt is selling cool water mugs on his thing and it's going hot. Oh, let's see where he makes them. And you know what? We're going to do a private label. Or if he manufactures, we'll ask him if he wants to do private label for us. And there you are. So you're incredibly captive to Amazon. So the answer is absolutely 100% working hard towards diversifying it. But the hard thing is, Matt, I feel like when I was growing up, and sure when you were growing up, it was such a different world where if you had to advertise, there were only so many vehicles, so many channels that you could do so. You'd be TV, radio, newspaper, right?
Yep.
That was like kind of it. Now, just think about it. It's like Google and Instagram and TikTok and Amazon and SEO for everyone and ad spend for everyone. And it is like, OMG.
I know. Yeah.
So it's hard. It's a lot. And so I would highly recommend anyone who's in the space, definitely it can get overwhelming, but just continue to stick with the data. And if you're not a good data miner, make sure that you have somebody, whether it's a consultant or someone who can really help you data mine and really understand how to most effectively do your ad spend. Because in addition to trying to move a lot of the traffic to online and trying to sort of balance it out, so at least we can diversify a little bit away from Amazon, we're working really hard on that wholesale avenue. But those leads take a long time, whether you're on something using a platform like RangeMe, which, you go online to sort of try to get access to some of these larger retailers. I don't know if you're familiar or your reviewers are familiar with RangeMe, but whatever that is, the lead times still take a long time. You can get a call 3 months later, or even if you go to some of these Expo West or fancy food show, it takes a while. So you work hard at it every single day. I work hard at it every single day. Sometimes it takes a while till I hear back, but it's definitely a moving target and something I'm working hard towards doing.
Yeah, those can be really long cycles and it can be a little volatile on the wholesale side too, especially when you're working with really big retailers, because when you're all in, you're all in. But when you're out, you're all out, right? So I think it's a really great perspective and it's important for people to hear that you have this effort towards diversifying through like Amazon. And you're kind of like becoming omni-channel that way. I think is a really sustainable way to think about, selling a product like this. So that's amazing.
Yeah,
so
the other thing too, I have actually heard from people who've told me that like, it sounds like so sexy. Like Walmart contacted me like a year ago and I was like, whoa, oh my gosh, I've made it, and I'm in the big leagues now. And then we had a conversation at how much they wanted the product. And I'm like, wait a second, that's like below my cost. And I know that their EDLP, like that is like their mantra. Every single employee from the CEO all the way down to the stock workers are all EDLP, everyday low price, every single minute of the day, but it can't be below the cost. And so I've heard actually from people who've said, you really do have to be careful because even some of these larger retailers, as a small business, I know it might sound sexy, but as a startup, you also have to understand your infrastructure and what you're comfortable with fulfilling, because Walmart works on a reverse working capital structure where they'll actually have you pay everything up front and then you won't get the money till 3 or 4, 6 months down the road. If you're a small
interesting
business, your working capital is incredibly important. You need to have some of that cash coming back in. And so I would just also tell your entrepreneurs or anyone who listens to the call who is a startup to actually really, really be careful and read the details and just don't go blindly with something that might sound sexy, but might underneath that first layer or two not be so good for your business and might actually put you out of business, because I've actually heard Walmart doing that. In fact, the gentleman who I was talking to actually told me as such, and he's like, we do put small startups out of business. So make sure before you commit, what you're capable of doing in terms of units, what you're able to handle in terms of payment terms. So it's very important, buyer beware.
Yeah, that's a very honest take from a buyer from a big box store. I'm surprised to hear that, but that's good that they're transparent at least.
I like to
because it's true.
People.
Yeah, it's true though. It's good, and it's good for people to know, because then nobody wins. Of course, obviously, like when that does happen, unfortunately, if they don't win, the buyer doesn't get anything, because the business goes out of business, and the business owners don't too. So yeah, I mean, this is good to hear that there's still some transparency out there with some of like those giant box stores like that.
It's rare to hear, but
Yeah.
we'll say though. So what we decided to actually do is not go into the stores and actually test it on Walmart.com. So why it's important, if I can just share. So Walmart, you really think about it, Walmart is actually the original Amazon, right? Prior to Amazon, when Jeff Bezos was buying all these big box and trucks and warehouses back in the 80s, and everyone thought he was crazy and spending so much money, it was genius because he built this infrastructure that he has today, right? To be able to sell every single little widget down to a piece of dust and get it to you in 2 days. Mm-hmm. But Walmart really was and has been for a very long time the largest retailer. They have the warehouses, they have the trucks, they have the infrastructure to be able to be the closest thing to be able to, outside of Alibaba, to be able to, at least in the US, to compete effectively with Amazon in terms of their infrastructure, right? Also, they are still like top 5, if not top 3, largest retailers and online retailers. And so the one good thing about being on Walmart.com, and I definitely encourage any companies who small businesses, it costs nothing. You can spend to advertise, but the good thing about it is when you do Google search, and it's all about how people find you, when you do Google search for a product, Amazon comes up in that search bar, and Walmart as well. The places where your product can be found come up. So it really costs you nothing to be on Walmart.com, Walmart Marketplace. So highly encourage companies to be on there too, just to have sort of your name up there, even if you can't advertise. If you can't advertise, you throw a little money at it. If you can't, at least your name is up there. So if people are searching for your particular type of product or category, they'll see you.
Right. Is there any friction between working with Amazon and using their fulfillment, and then, turn around and being on like the Walmart Plus platform? Is there any friction there? I mean, do they ask any questions about that when you sell on Amazon or anything like that? Or is it kind of...
Well, no. Well, for Amazon, so they're fulfilling everything. On Walmart, we don't have the scale. So it depends. Walmart has the equivalent of like FBA and FBM fulfilling. Right. You can fulfill it, or Walmart can fulfill it. It doesn't make sense for you to fulfill it on Walmart unless you have the same scale that you have on Amazon, at least not for us. And so,
gotcha.
Example, we're on there, but I'm really not advertising a lot because I'm spending most of my advertising budget, and like you said, Google, where people can find us, Google ads. So I don't have the same volumes that I sell in Walmart that I do on Amazon. I'm hoping to get there. In fact, I actually have a call with one of their small business merchants who sort of like help guide you and that kind of thing, mentoring on there, but I don't have that. So I currently don't have Walmart fulfilling anything. And unless you're doing insane amount of volumes, I also don't recommend that you fulfill, because those are just extra added costs for you. So I definitely encourage you to be on the platform, learn a little bit about it. And if you do get to that scale where you're selling the same velocity you're selling on Amazon, then you look into Walmart fulfillment services. But where they do come to battle is Amazon scours the internet. Make sure that whatever you're selling is not below what it's on Amazon for, because if you get big enough, you start to see that, perk up the eyes of people of the Amazon folks or whoever's scouring the internet, and they see that, they will take you off. And that could be very impactful to your business, especially if you're selling in volume on Amazon. You don't want that to happen. So
that's interesting. I think people may not know that. I didn't know that. So is that one of like the things when you sell through Amazon is like you can't list it on another platform or on your own platform for less than what it goes for on Amazon? Exactly. Is that the thing with them?
Exactly. And you want to have uniform. Okay. They may find you, they may not find you. You might be really small where right now they don't find you, but eventually they will find you. And if they do and they deplatform you, I will tell you, it is a PIA. I think you know what that acronym stands for.
Yeah.
to get relisted and to do the whole thing. And it's sometimes with Amazon, it's really tough to find, even when you call the help desk, to find one, a live person, and number two, to find someone who actually understands what the issue is and help you. It might take a couple of follow-up calls. So you don't want that to happen. So definitely one uniform price across the board is what I would suggest.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best advice. Just you don't even have to think about it or just go down that route and put yourself and potentially get the platform there. Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm shocked that has not come up before in any of my other podcasts, but I think that's really insightful for people to know who might be interested in selling on Amazon or who are already selling on Amazon. So I just want to ask too, in past years for the business, kind of how growth has been. With all the things you're working on this year, obviously you just got through Q1 2024 here. How are you projecting growth growth, on your Amazon store, just kind of all things considered in 2024 relative to how it's kind of been past years as we're like coming out of like COVID years here?
Yes. So I will tell you, 2020 was a tough time to start a business, but that's actually when I started. And then it took a good like 9 months or so then to actually have a product that was in the market. Last year was the first year that we sort of had really great success. We broke through a 6-digit number, and it's
awesome.
Incredibly exciting. I know it seems really small, but from coming from where we were to now, incredibly exciting and rewarding. And so this year, my hope is that I can grow that at least 50%, if not higher. I'm just being conservative. But within that too, understanding and managing the budget, because it really can, like I said, you can really dump a hole in absolutely anything. And sometimes the internet and social media marketing can be a really big, wide term. Marketing could be micro influencers that you're paying X amount to tout your product or take your product for free or whatever the case is from Google Ads. So it all falls under that market and that umbrella. And it's important that even if you don't fully, I would definitely advise any entrepreneur, even if you don't fully have a grasp on all of your numbers, that you really have somebody. I always say this, like, I feel like there are a few things that are really important to have on your Rolodex and permanent. And one is definitely a good accountant or bookkeeper, someone who knows the numbers. And if you don't, someone who can help you explain through that so you understand your burn rate. You don't have to be intimately involved down to the pennies, but you do have to have a good understanding of sort of what you're selling, what you're burning through, what sales channels does it make the most sense for you to reinvest in. Try to understand that so you can be better at forecasting your business. And I think that puts you in a better position of success to be able to succeed versus you having no idea and just throwing money everywhere. That could be very dangerous. Again, unless you have unlimited pockets and you're Jeff Bezos' cousin, I would say you really can do something like that. And two, a good lawyer. You need a good
lawyer. That was the other thing I was going to ask, is just earlier today, I had another conversation with somebody who had a product. It was like this very, very unique and novel idea, very, very much like yours. It's just one of those things like could be very easily recreated if you don't have the protections in place, by some like big players doing mass manufacturing of candy or hard candies or cough drops or anything already. So that's one thing I always like to touch on too, because, for maybe a younger entrepreneur might be listening, or even an entrepreneur that maybe is more seasoned, but are in maybe an area where that's a little bit more paramount to their success, or, have a little bit more risk on the legal side or the accounting side. So can you talk me through, what your experience was with, like, make sure you got those things set up on the front end rather than, did you kind of learn it along the way after you had a problem, or was it something you had set up like prior to?
Oh my gosh, OMG, Matt, I cannot even tell you. That's like a whole different webcast that we have to have.
Fair enough. We'll do it. We'll do another one.
I could go on, but I'll tell you really quickly. The first thing that I'll say is, if you have a good idea and you really have like a good day, the first thing that I would advise anyone to do is to go onto the U.S. Patent Trade Office, USPTO, and you can Google that, and go on to the trademark listing. In there is a search space where you can actually type in what you potentially want to do. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that no one has that name, because it will save you a lot of trouble down the road. I actually know and have heard of people who have tried coming to market with a name only for it to be infringing on somebody else's. So that's the first thing that you want to do. And if you're working on a sketch for whatever your logo is or what you want it to be, you want to make sure that when you do enter and file for that trademark, so highly recommend first check for that name, make sure that it's not taken. Two, if you're going to file, make sure that you enter in all of the logo and any colors, as much information as you can fill out to make sure that you're as protected as possible. And it takes a lot of time. So I would definitely encourage any entrepreneur to do that as soon as possible, because it takes somewhere from like 3 to 6 months to hear back from the trademark patent office. And it's so incredibly, you can't see it here, it's so incredibly important because that little R. So once they actually file it and no one else has it, you can use a TM, which means you're a trademark. So the little TM, like Coca-Cola has that little R, meaning it's a registered trademark. You can use the circle TM while the patent office is looking into it. But then after they actually come back and say, congratulations, in lawyers speak, they'll tell you that you're actually okay. Then you can use it as a registered logo. Make sure you have the R plastered anywhere that you sell this product because it is insanely important. And I'll tell you as much. There are other, if you Google, there are other MommaBears, MAMABEAR, and it's incredibly important that you have that yourself protected from that, especially because it's part of your intellectual property, right? It's part of what makes you that company, in what you do. So anyway, so that's incredibly important. And two, if you're going to manufacture a product, it's good that you sit down with your manufacturer. I had a lawyer also help me look over the manufacturing agreement. And so you might want to set up a manufacturing agreement with your manufacturer. If your manufacturer manufactures on a larger scale, they might have somebody who's competing with you, right? You don't know that. And so that might be a conversation you might want to have. That might be something you might want written into the contract. Maybe they want to make private label. So I don't know if you know what private label is or.
Oh, yeah, I'm private label. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So your manufacturer, what's to stop your manufacturer from making your product, private labeling it, and slapping CVS's name on it or Walmart's name on it. And so it's incredibly important you talk about these things, maybe set up an agreement. That's something you might need a lawyer for. And even in marketing, I'll be honest with you, I was bamboozled from a marketing company who had me sign a 1-year contract. By the way, don't sign a 1-year contract with anybody. And about 3 months in, they didn't want to work with me anymore because I had asked, I guess she didn't like that I was asking too many questions. And she wouldn't give me the rest of my year's money back. And I had to bring a lawyer. It was a lot of money. So having someone good, not if you can't afford them on the payroll, but at least have them on the Rolodex, someone you can just call up if you're having kind of these things or to talk through these things is very, very important. The other thing I would say is that there are lawyers that specialize in, especially startups, large firms. I forgot the name of it, Perkin something. Anyways, one of the largest for startups. They're really big firms. You don't need to do that, and you'll ultimately end up spending a lot more. So I really suggest that you put feelers out through your network, through other networks. I'm on Startup CPG, a Slack group, which has been really a great resource for me. But you could just type into the search bar lawyers and and you'll get someone advising something through word of mouth. But you don't have to spend on a top tier law firm unless Amazon is going after you. So, so long as you have someone who understands the entrepreneurial world, finding someone good through word of mouth, you'll be good.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think it's one of the most important and I think under discussed parts of being a new entrepreneur, or it doesn't even have to be a new entrepreneur. I mean, so you might skate by with a brand that's like underrepresented in a legal way for years, and maybe you just get lucky and no manufacturer goes and private labels your stuff, or you don't get sued even though like you definitely could have because you're using a name that's been trademarked for years, like, and just maybe nobody noticed, because the longer that goes on, the more at risk you really are. So to do that stuff on the front end, I think is really an important thing for people to understand, how much you can avoid, how much money hemorrhaging you can avoid, and how many huge problems you can avoid by just spending a little bit of money to find a decent attorney or a decent firm to help you on the front end rather than dealing with problems as they come. I think is a really important thing for people to hear from a CEO and founder like yourself. So
totally.
A couple questions I love to ask everybody that comes on the pod. First being, if you could go back, I know you started in 2020, kind of right during COVID. So everything you've learned since then up to now, if you can go back to the inception of the brand and kind of day one and give yourself one piece of advice, what do you think that one piece of advice would be?
Don't do this unless you're really committed. I think people really fall in love with the sexiness of being your own boss and of just how wonderful that could be. You could set your own schedule and it'll be fantastic, but you go through an immense amount of growing pains, an immense amount of highs and lows. And unless it's something you really want to do, you really have to believe in yourself, number one, but number two, be able to ride those highs and lows. And with that, I would highly recommend that you have a good sounding board around you. I have sort of a non-formal advisory board of just people that I respect a lot who have bigger businesses and have been through some of these things before me that offer me really solid advice when I need it. And you may be lucky, you may not be, but make sure that you do have sort of a sounding board of people that you sort of can trust, and that if you really have faith and belief in the product you're launching, have faith in yourself and give yourself the space to also fail, because you will fail a lot, but give yourself that chance to grow and be committed to it. Otherwise, it won't work.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And one of my favorite ways I've ever heard, learning from your mistakes framed in a more kind of elegant way was like, mistakes are just like answers, basically, like that you didn't know until you made the mistake. So like, okay, you made a mistake. you obviously got through it because the business still exists. Like now you know the answer to a problem that's probably going to happen again. And the more mistakes that you make, the more answers you have to problems that are going to be recurring and keep coming up that you can deal with much more efficiently and, spend less money in solving them when they come around again. I always try to take that approach whenever things happen. One, by remembering those so I can not try to forget that I made the mistake because I feel ashamed and my ego, but really no, remember, let it affect you, but deal with it. And then because when it happens again, you won't forget how you dealt with it the first time. You'll know, and you can be proud that you dealt with it the first time. So when it happens again, you already have that answer fresh in your mind. It's not always going to be exactly the same, obviously, but if you can deal with it in a healthy way and, go through those trials and tribulations and just learn from them and, be excited that you had the opportunity to learn, how to deal with a problem that is going to happen again, whether it's in this business or the next. That's always been, I think one of my favorite ways to, think about some of the trials and tribulations
and
that
well
happen.
Said, actually, and well said, for sure.
Yeah. But I think that's really, that's really good advice too. I think people do get, obsessed with the sexiness of having a brand, and all you see on TikTok and Instagram is one of my favorite accounts on TikTok is a perfect example. There's this kid who's always posting I made $1 million last month. There's sending envelopes to grandmothers on Facebook. It's yeah, that's great. I'm sure there's a much more of that story that you're not sharing, but it's that's fine because it's entertaining. I like to watch the kid because he's funny and super stoic, and it's great. But that's kind of from the outside looking in for an entrepreneur that's maybe looking to start something for the first time. That's all that you see is just his overnight success, nothing about the story. But if you follow the right people, you get insights into the story. People are very transparent. Those are the people I like. But if you're just casually coming across entrepreneurs that are either claiming to or actually make a lot of money, all you have to talk about is the success, how much I make, the things I did, how I differentiate myself and all these things. And no, I think a lot of the points of our conversation today are just surrounding kind of the preeminent things you have to do on the front end to make sure that you can have that lasting success. Because if you're not made of money, you can't just deal with things as they come. You have to protect yourself on the front end with solid accounting and, make sure you have legal processes in place from day one to be able to, deal with those things as they come. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really insightful for, I think a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, and, to hear that from you, I think could help really steer people in the right direction. So I appreciate that. And then second question I always love to ask, or not really a question, I suppose, but I just want to give you an opportunity to shout out your socials, any social handles, the website, let people know if they're listening, they love the brand, they like you, they want to keep in touch,
awesome.
Stay informed of everything that's happening with the brand. Let people know how they can stay in touch.
Absolutely. Our Instagram account is at MommaBear, MommaBear _organics. The website is www.mommabearusa.com. And there you'll be able to find an email. But if you want to give me a direct email, it's Soraya, SORAYA @mommabearusa.com.
Awesome.
And I always respond. It might take a little while, but I always try to respond to emails. But for sure, happy to help in any way that I can. And I always say, you're going to fall so much. And I'm so grateful that I've had people who've actually helped along the way. And I just believe in this whole good karma vibe, not without being too much of a hippie. But, I believe in paying it forward. So I do think that, you put good stuff out in the universe, it'll come back to you. And so I am happy to help in any way that I can. And I've had plenty of good stuff come back to me. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, thank you, Soraya. I really appreciate your time today. It was a very insightful conversation. I think there's a lot of value here for any folks listening. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Thank you, Soraya. Thanks, everyone.